All right, now that we've got this much of our form done, let's go back to our brackets file and let's do some more stuff with checkboxes. All right, so let's come down here. And if you remember, if we look at our text file, this is for volunteering interests, and this is where somebody would choose all that apply. And so these are the different options: ticket taking, handing out water bottles, set up, clean up, right? So I'm just going to copy this whole thing again. I'll just bring it right into brackets. I'm going to paste it and just tab that in. Okay, so where it says volunteering interest, for right now, I will put a paragraph tag around it just for now, right? We'll think about if there's a better choice than that later. All right, so, and then next, where it says, I might actually leave where it says choose all that apply. Let's leave that as an option. I'll get rid of that final parenthesis, and again, oops, let's do the Shift Command J, and I'll put a paragraph tag around that too. Okay. All right, and so now we've got ticket taking, handing out water bottles, set up, clean up. All right, it's going to be the same thing where the checkbox traditionally comes right before, you know, where this X is that I'm typing. So this part right here would be the label where it says ticket taking, and the X part would be where we would traditionally have that input. So I'm going to do input, and we're going to do type equals, and then it's going to be a checkbox type. All right, and again, we need to have a name, and this is where it's a little different than a radio button. With a radio button, because you're only supposed to choose one of multiple options, then it makes sense that the name is the same, like as in it is here for age, 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 and then only one gets chosen, so only one goes through with the key of age with the value of whatever it happens to be, in like maybe newsletter only or something, right? Well, with checkboxes, it's a little different because a checkbox can have, like you can choose multiple things, right? So there are different ways to do checkboxes, and I'm not going to get into the more complex way because this is not a scripting class. This is a regular HTML and CSS kind of class, right? So in theory, there's a different way that you could also do this name a little bit differently. But for our intents and purposes, what we're going to do is we're going to say that the name needs to be unique, because if we make it all the same, then if somebody were to check multiple things that had the same name, then it would only probably select the last one as being the valid one. So we need to give this something that says like interests 1, and then we can do interest 2, interest 3, and so on. So we can say interest 1. All right, and then the next thing that we would need to do is we would have the ID, right, and then the ID, and then let's just go ahead and put the placeholder in for the value, all right, since they might be the same thing. Okay, and so again, we don't want the ID to be the same as where it says interest 1, because we don't know what that interest happens to be, or we certainly don't want the value to be that because we don't know what that happens to be. So for the value in this one, I might just say tickets, and that would help us understand that they want to be part of the ticketing process, ticket taking process, right? Well, I can use that same value for the ID as well, okay? And then it's going to be the same principle where you don't want any of these IDs to be the same for these different ones, or you know, or the values to be the same, right? Because they're different. Like if interest 1 is supposed to be the key that's to say, okay, the interest is, and then you would say the value is tickets, right? Then you don't want those things to be interest 1 is interest 1, right? You don't want that to be the same. So anyway, it's very similar to radio buttons, but the difference is that now if I come over here for this I'll do the labels in just a minute. If I come over here and I copy this and I put this in place of this little X, and we say that this is going to be interest 2, all right, and it's not tickets, it's going to be water bottles, water dash bottles, okay, all right, then we can copy this and we can put that in for the value as well, okay. All right, and the same thing is going to be true again, where we copy and then we paste this. In fact, we'll say interest 3, and then where this says tickets, we'll say setup. I'll just make it one word, and then the value will be setup. And then again, we'll do this, and this will be interest 4, and we'll say cleanup is one word, right? Okay, so now what we're left with is we have these things that say ticket taking at the end, handing out water bottles at the end, and so on. Those need to be turned into labels. So I'm going to select ticket taking, and I'm going to do my Command Shift J, and I'm going to wrap around with the label tag. And then I remember I need to say label 4, so we'll say 4 equals, and then it's going to be for tickets, because this label is for the tickets ID. Okay, so it's going to pair those things up. And to make it really clear, I will go ahead and I'll separate these things. Okay, and the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and do the same thing here where it says handing out water bottles. I'll wrap a label tag around it. And again, that one's going to be 4. And we'll say it's for the ID of water bottles. Copy that. Okay. I'm just going to copy this ID since I know I'm going to use it in a second. And then we'll wrap the label tag around this one as well. 4 setup. And cleanup is the last one. And label. And we'll put the 4 attribute again, and this one is cleanup. Okay. Now, if you want to be able to see this a little bit more clearly, you can always just return this down to the next line, and it won't hurt anything because remember in HTML it doesn't read all that white space in between, and we know that these things go together. Okay. Now, if I save this, let's take a look and see what this is going to look like. And remember, the other thing too that we actually did not do is we didn't put this inside of a paragraph tag like I did up here. And I think I want to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to select this entire set of inputs and labels, and I'm going to copy them. So not copy, I'm sorry. I'm going to wrap them in a paragraph tag. My bad. And put them inside of this p tag, right? Like so. Okay. And in fact, we can take all of this and we'll just tab it in so it's easier to see what's happening. All right, and then I need to put break tags after each one of these, so we'll say BR, BR, BR. You could have wrapped paragraph tags around each one if you wanted. That's fine too. Let's save this and take a look. Pardon me. Hit refresh. And then now we've got something that allows me to choose a radio button. You see it only gives me one choice, but I can choose all or none of these, right? Okay. So there's that. Right? That's how you do checkboxes. Now, the last thing that we wanted to do, if you look back at our little notes, all right, is we wanted to have something that was for special skills. All right, and we can say, please let us know. I'm going to copy this please let us know thing, this sentence, and we'll come over here And down here, we will put it inside of a paragraph tag. I'll go ahead and do that first. And then after that paragraph, we're going to use something called textarea. And you can just sort of, it's not input now, it's textarea. Okay, it's a different kind of tag. And so the other it doesn't have the same kind of type that the others do. And the thing is that this is different also. Well, it doesn't have a type attribute because it's just a different type of tag. It's not just a regular input, it's a textarea type of field. And so the type is inherent in the name of the tag in this case, but we do still need a name. They always need a name for the form elements. And so for this, we'll just call this skills, right? And then for ID, we can also call that skills, it's fine. All right. And then the other thing too is because this is going to be like a regular text box, if you don't want somebody going on and on and on and on and on, you can also do a thing called max length, and you can give it like a max length of 500, and that would be 500 characters. Right now this is different because it does have an ending tag, right? And it automatically put it there because I'm using autocomplete on my IDE for brackets, right? So this little text area thing is going to work just fine by itself like that. Now, if you need to have a label still, right? So in this case, I want the label to come ahead of it. And then what we can do is we can actually, let's go ahead and type label. And then we'll say for, and it's for skills ID. And then we can say special skills like that. Okay. And let's save that and let's do a test. See how it looks, refresh. Okay, and so you can see that this is the kind that can get resized, right? And you can type all sorts of manner of things in here. Okay, all right, so that's how this form is shaping up so far. The one thing that we still have left that we can't do anything in a form without is the submit button. So inside the form tag, see this is the end of the form tag, so we have to make sure we're staying inside of that. We need to make a submit button. So this is one where it's actually, I'm just going to start typing, it's an input, okay? Even though it doesn't give you a place to type, the reason that we know that it's going to work as a submit button is because the type is actually submit. It's a submit type. All right, and then we can give it an ID, right? And so then that's going to be, let's call that submit also. And then we're also going to give it a name, and we'll give that, oops, submit. And this one, we actually need to put the value in as well. So we're going to give this a value, and I'm going to make the value submit. And just so you know, whenever you do that, the value where it says submit is actually going to show up inside the button. Let's just go ahead and save this, and let's do a test real quick. Let's take a look, hit refresh, and then you see there's this submit button right here at the end. We didn't wrap a paragraph or anything around it, so it's sitting in line side by side. But if I were to click that button, then it would take me to this page, and you can see what it's doing now is it's got full name. We didn't put a value in, we left it blank. We didn't fill anything in. We've got email, no value, phone, no value, password, no value, skills, no value. Submit does have a value because it explicitly had a value. What is missing from here are the radio buttons and the check marks because we just didn't select any of them. And by default, this helps you understand by seeing this that if just by default you can see that all of these other inputs, they all have, well, and skills is not an input, it's a text area, but all of them by default will submit the name with an empty value. I know that might sound weird, but it would be the same as going into each one of these and typing value equals like that. Okay, it's the exact same thing as typing that into every single one of these things. Well, not this. Okay. These didn't get selected. These never got checked. And so it would be the same thing as putting value equals 0, or not 0, value equals empty, nothing, right? We just didn't put anything inside of there. If I save this and I come back, let's go back to my form, hit refresh, and I hit submit again, you'll see that it does exactly the same thing. It's that value equals nothing, right? The other thing I want to show you really quickly, and I just want to be really clear, this is not something you would actually choose to do. It's not a good idea. But I just want to show you as an illustration. So you don't have to do this along with me, just watch what happens. If I actually put something in as that value and I say, where it says first name and last name, I say Mark. Let's just say I put Mark there, and for email, I'm just going to leave email alone. I'll just put Mark in for the first name and last name. And I save this. Let's go back here and let's hit refresh. Oops, sorry, not that form. Let's go back to the original form, hit refresh. Okay, and you'll see what happens is that it puts that initial value in there. And what people used to do a long time ago is that they would, you know, say, try to encourage people to just type in there, and so they'd put a value there, and a lot of times they would it would be the word like name, right? So that they would think, oh well, I don't have to use this, right? They would maybe not have the this portion that I've highlighted. They wouldn't have the label, and they would just put name in there as the initial value, hoping that somebody would fill it out. But the problem is that if somebody doesn't actually fill it out and they leave it blank, and but it has the value, that value actually does get submitted. So if I were to go in there and here, let's hit refresh, and it's already got the name Mark in there. If I hit submit, see, it does still pass that value along, and that is no good because that's the value that I, as the developer, put in there, and it's disingenuous. It doesn't mean anything. All right, but I just want you to see that, and so you might wonder, well, wait, how do people do that where there's like a placeholder in there? Well, there's a thing called placeholder, and you could say, let's say first and last name. Okay, so you could put that, or you could just put first, you could just put name or whatever. Let's just save that and do a test. Oops, sorry, wrong one. Let's go back here, refresh, and you see that it's kind of grayed out. That's the default browser behavior, is to sort of gray it out. It's not dark black the way it was. And so if I start to click here and I go to type something, right, it gets rid of what was there before, okay, and it'll start to fill that in for me. But it behaves as a placeholder, right? And so in fact, if I just hit refresh again and I see my placeholder there and I hit submit, you'll see that it doesn't put first and last name there the way that it did with me actually filling in the value. So that's actually very helpful to understand when you're designing these forms. I think it's really good to know what happens on the other end so that you don't think that you're doing something kind of helpful and cool and really it's no good, right? And so where it says value equals nothing, you don't have to put that there, right? Later, if you ever get into doing programming or you know, web scripting or something like that, then this could be handy to have here as something that's just a blank empty value. So you can have it there or not. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't hurt anything. It doesn't help anything. Later, if you were to script it, it might help to have something that was already there to put something in here, but otherwise, don't worry about it. This placeholder, though, is helpful, except for the fact that we already have, if you go back here, we already have a label next to it. So it's kind of redundant to have information in here, I think, right? And so unless you're going to do something like where you visually hide the label and maybe throw it off the page somewhere, you could use this placeholder inside of just an empty form field, and so that it encourages people to type. But some people also think that's confusing. So I'm going to choose not to do it. I just wanted to show you that you could do that in case you were wondering how to do that. All right, so, and I'm also going to leave off where it says value equals nothing. I'm just going to take all of these off because I don't think that they're helpful. I think that they just kind of add more stuff to weed through. I only want to add things that actually are necessary. So I'm going to get rid of anything that says value equals empty. Okay, So let's save that. And this is a good place to stop for this particular part of the tutorial. In the next one, we're going to talk about how to better organize this information visually, right? How to organize this so that it's not just all jumbled up and lumped together, so that it's easy to read, not just through CSS, but these things called field sets that are also ADA accessible.